Donald Trump was already unpopular before he triggered a massive, painful, and unnecessary trade war with the rest of the planet. Well, now we're starting to see some polls post tariff war come in, and the news is devastating for Donald Trump, even among conservative pollsters, even among his very favorite pollster during his previous campaign. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we're going to take a look at this clip here from CNN data analyst Harry Enton as he unpacks some of the recent news surrounding Trump's polling with respect to the economy. And then we're going to look at some devastating new polling, particularly from conservative pollsters, including one that Trump relied on the most during his campaign.
This is pretty normal stuff.
Yeah, if this is pretty normal stuff, I'd like to know what not normal stuff is. If this is a boom, I'd like to know what a bust is. I mean, my goodness gracious, we'll talk about it. I mean, talk about the S&P 500. It's dropped 15% under Donald Trump's presidency. The S&P 500 has been collecting data essentially since 1957. It's been an index. I went back and I looked for drops of 15% with a president who was inheriting a bull market. There's only one dude on your screen. It's Donald John Trump. He is the only one to see a drop of 15% this soon into his presidency in the S&P 500 after inheriting a bull market. In fact, there's only one other president who has seen a drop of 15% this early on in his presidency, and that was George W. Bush back in 2001. But of course, he was in fact inheriting the dot-com bubble bust. And so this is truly unique, where you come in with a bull market and then boom, right through the floor, Donald Trump, the S&P 500 dropping already 15%, Jessica.
And so there's the market, but then there's the chance of broader economic problems. And that chance is right. That possibility is rising, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. A chance of a recession, something none of us want to see. And what's the chance of a recession? I mean, J.P. Morgan, look at this, now up to 60%. It was 40% in early March. How about Goldman Sachs? It was 20% in early March. We're now up to 35%. Basically, at this point, you average all these different companies together who put forecasts out on the chance of a recession. It's about 50-50, way up from where we were at the beginning of this year. Poly market, where you can trade, was, I think, a 30% chance at the beginning of the year. Now it's 60%. No bueno. What stays in the stock market, what happens?
And I also want to point out that Goldman Sachs has actually updated it to 45%. That's how bad it is.
In the stock market may not stay in the stock market, Jessica.
And Americans do seem to be having an issue with how Trump is handling the economy right now.
Yeah, I mean, you look at these numbers, you wouldn't be surprised to see Donald Trump's net approval rating. Compare it now to where it was at this point in the first term. In the first term, he was above water at plus 5 points. Where is he now? He's way underwater. He is swimming with the fishes. Look at this. He is the worst ever for a president at this point in a term, on record at minus 12 points. I just never thought I would see the day, because as we were hinting at the beginning, Trump promised an economic boom. Voters bought into it, but so far they ain't liking what they're seeing.
Jimmy Carter's
So there you have some of it, right? Again, this is devastating for Donald Trump, given his previous advantage with respect to the economy, at least with respect to polling, okay? Now let's turn to some of the recent polls. So again, 538 is no longer with us. ABC shuttered it. So we're turning to Nate Silver, who is perhaps the most famous polling analyst and polling aggregator. He is the founder of 538. And this is how he reports it. We've had 3 entirely post-Liberation Day polls. None of them are good for Donald Trump. In today's New Navigator research poll, 44% of registered voters approve of Trump and 53% disapprove. Yikes, let's start there. Brutal. After last week's tariff announcement, Trump's economic approval has dropped precipitously, now tied for his worst ever in Navigator tracking since 2018. His overall job approval rating has also declined. Americans are growing increasingly unfavorable towards tariffs, and a majority want to see Congress take back its power over them from Trump. Nearly 2 in 3 Americans feel uneasy about their personal finances, and roughly 3 in 5 say the economy is getting worse. So let's look at this right here. Do you approve or disapprove of the way Trump is handling his job as president? 44% approval, 53% disapprove. That's brutal. That's a -9, a net loss of 9 points. Terrible for Trump. Do you approve or disapprove of the way Trump is handling the economy? Only 42% approve, 55% disapprove. Again, devastating for Donald Trump, and Democrats should absolutely be exploiting this. And the latest Morning Consult poll showed Trump with a net approval of -6. So let's look at that real quick. If I can find it here. Oh, you got to have a account to sign in, but that's okay. We'll take Nate Silver's word for it. And then Rasmussen. This is a big one because it's a relatively conservative pollster. Even Rasmussen's daily tracking poll, where Trump has gotten some of his most positive approval numbers of a second term, has him 4 points underwater. Yep. This is terrible, terrible news for Donald Trump. And actually, this actually looks at like -12. Actually, I think, unless I'm missing something, Silver has this one wrong. 4 points underwater. I mean, my God, total disapproval for Trump is at 51%, and total. Oh no, I see it right here. I'm sorry, I was looking at strongly approve and total disapprove. Okay, so 47% total approve and 51% total disapprove. That is a -4 points. Again, and Rasmussen being one of his friendlier pollsters. But before we get to the big one, I just want to say in terms of the aggregation, that puts, according to Nate Silver, Trump's aggregate approval rating at disapproval, 50%. He's at 50% disapproval, 46.3 approval. Stunning. So, unfortunately for Trump, it's not just that. It's also his most reputable pollster. It's the pollster he valued the most, the one whom he relied on the most during his campaign, as Newsweek reports. Donald Trump's approval rating goes negative with his top pollster, that's Tony Fabrizio, who did a poll for the Wall Street Journal. Americans were souring on Trump's economic plans before the tariff bloodbath. Tepid support for tariffs through the past year has become disapproval, with 54% of voters opposing Trump's levies on imported goods, 12 points more than those who support his plans. Again, this particular poll was taken prior to the tariffs, okay? Let's see here. Among all voters, 46% approve of Trump's overall job performance and 51% disapprove. Quote, American voters give the president a little grace at the beginning. John Anzalone, a Democratic pollster who conducted the Journal survey with Republican Tony Fabrizio. Again, that's Trump's campaign pollster, Tony Fabrizio. Quote, they can have high anxiety about his economic policy and tariffs, and they also want to wait and see. I think that's where people are. But again, that was prior to what's happening now. Now, the polls results are really bad for Trump, according to this Wall Street Journal poll and others as well. So Trump is really hemorrhaging support here, folks. He really is. We have 3 post-Liberation Day polls, all disastrous for Donald Trump. I imagine it's only going to get worse as the new poll results come in. Can't imagine what Fox News is going to say on the matter, although I will say that Fox published this article yesterday, Poll Position, where Trump stands with Americans 11 weeks into his second White House term. Trump is losing the narrative on tariffs. A GOP pollster warns, got his work cut out for him. Now, they try to do some throat clearing here, talk about how active he is, but once you get to a few paragraphs down, it's not good. While Trump regularly showcases his performance steering the nation, some of the latest national public opinion polls suggest Americans may not be so pleased with the job he's doing as president, which is hilarious to me. Again, that throat clearing. Some of the latest national polls suggest Americans may not. Do you think they'd be using such flowery language if President Biden were still in office and this were happening on Biden's watch? No, they would say all of the latest national public polling indicate that Americans are not happy. They're trying to clear their throat and help Donald Trump out, but the facts are against him here. Trump stands at 43% approval and 53% approval in a Reuters Ipsos survey conducted, again, prior to the tariffs. He's also underwater at 51% in a Wall Street Journal poll. And he's hemorrhaging in every major sector of support, particularly on the economy. In most polls nowadays, the area where he's the strongest, and even that is hemorrhaging, is on immigration. So again, Donald Trump has had the shortest presidential honeymoon in presidential history. These tariffs have become a political bloodbath for Donald Trump in terms of hemorrhaging support. And again, Democrats would be wise to ruthlessly and consistently pounce on this. Make Donald Trump pay a political price. Make the Republicans pay a political price. Do not assume that facts speak for themselves and that the American people will always draw the connection between their economic hardship and Trump. You have to paint a picture consistently. Because again, midterms are not till, more than about, a year and a half from now? It'd be foolish to just assume this momentum will carry itself. So you have to act, if you're a Democratic politician or a Democratic surrogate, to make this momentum sustain itself as long as possible. But there you go. Donald Trump's Republican pollsters, his very favorite pollster, are all turning against him, saying that he is underwater And poll after poll after poll reaffirms it as well. But in the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.